one of the things that I'm going to do, because I only have a certain amount of slides and presentation stuff, is I'm going to bribe you all into making this, into helping me, shall we say. And so what we really want to understand is what are the barriers to mobile research adoption. I've got a lot of thoughts about what these things are, but I think you, the audience, have been listening to lots of fantastic presentations over the course of the last 2 days, and you've obviously been working in this for a while, and so you probably know a little bit about this too. And so we have a little competition. So the person who comes up with the best barrier, or the biggest barrier, should I say, to mobile research adoption will win a lovely bottle of champagne. Because I wanted you to help me out with this as much as possible. I have an idea what this is, and if you manage to guess what I'm thinking, then yeah, you get the bottle. Okay, so before we get started, a quick introduction to on-device research. We're a mobile survey company. We've done around 25 million surveys now across 79 markets. We provide the survey technology to make this work. We provide access to the consumers to take these surveys, and we provide the advice to make sure that our clients get good and robust data. So why are we all here, and why is there such a big excitement around mobile research? Well, in Asia Pacific particularly, the major reason for this is just the huge adoption of mobile and how that can replace face-to-face research. And so I don't need to go into too much detail as to how many people have a mobile phone, because you all know pretty much everybody has a mobile phone. But if you start to understand things in Indonesia, it becomes clearer what the opportunity is. And so although a lot of people say that there's around 40% penetration of internet users, actually when you look at that from the adult population, it's around half the population now, and that's continuously growing over time. And when we look at the profile of the sample that we can gain access to, what we can see is that around 2/3 of these people actually don't use a PC. They don't touch it at all. So if anybody's talking about device agnostic or something like that in Indonesia, what you should be really focusing on is what large percentage of people are not using a PC and are using it on their mobile device. So with this huge opportunity, there are fantastic reasons why the research industry is going to change. And so we've been hearing fantastic presentations from lots of different people. And those presentations have been explaining lots of the virtues of mobile research, particularly in Southeast Asia, and particularly because of that replacement of face-to-face research through to mobile research. And so what we've been hearing from lots of people is that it's going to be incredibly quick. It's going to be much faster, so you can gain results in days rather than weeks. Everybody has a mobile phone, so you can actually reach a lot more people than you could do previously. And so lots of face-to-face research is just concentrated on cities. And actually, when you ask the research buyers why is it just concentrated on cities, it's because actually taking a face-to-face researcher and taking them out to a village is actually quite a hard thing to do, quite expensive. But actually, all of these people have mobile phones. Because there's no interviewer involved, and because this is all digitized, because you can automatically clean data when it's digitized, you can run algorithms that go through things to make sure that you take out the bad respondents, the data quality significantly improves. And last but no means least, the cost of it is significantly different. And so a face-to-face interview quite often costs $20, whereas a mobile survey starts from $3 or so. And so there's a huge shift there in what can happen. So we're putting all this together, and we're all here, and it's like, wow, this is a fantastic opportunity. It's amazing. But I've been coming to these research conferences for nearly 4 years, and pretty much the same things being said. It's a fantastic opportunity. There's obviously things in the way. There's a barrier for people moving what they're doing over to mobile. There's some obvious virtues to it, but when we look at the size of the market here, please ignore the pound sign. It's supposed to be a dollar sign. If we look at emerging Asia in terms of the size of the research market, it's around 1.1 billion. That there is all of Asia excluding Japan, China, South Korea, and Australia. Of that, it's estimated that between 30 to 50% of that is face-to-face data collection. So you've got around 350 million to 550 million being spent on face-to-face research at the moment in this region. Now, I run a mobile research company, and unfortunately, my company does not turn over $350 million, which I would love it to. So something is happening, and something is in the way there. And I can't believe that there is a very significant proportion of that being eaten away by mobile research at the moment. So what are these barriers? And it's nice that the room's filled up just at the optimum time, which is good, because now, hopefully, you can all help me out. So we need your help. So I want you all to discuss between your tables what you think is the biggest reason why mobile research is not being adopted that fast in Southeast Asia and the region. And so what we want you to do is discuss it between yourselves, and then we'll have some mics going around later, and anybody who feels like saying what they think is their biggest reason, they can shout it out and help us out. But also, if you want the chance to win some lovely champagne, please write it down on a piece of paper, write down your name, and then we'll collect those all up, and then we'll distribute it to the winner at the end of the presentation. So please, talk amongst yourselves. If everybody could write down their name as well, so we know who you are, and then there's going to be one prize for the people who are from brands and those people who are from research companies. So please, can you say basically what your company is on that bit of paper as well? That's it. Okay, who wants to start first? Piers over there. Hello? Okay, cool. Piers, why don't you start?
So what's the question again?
Always one.
Right, so why isn't more mobile research done?
What are the biggest barriers?
Very simple, very, very simple. Yep. Questionnaires are too long, right? And it kind of relates to the point I made earlier, is that when a client actually makes a decision to do research, they want to cram in as much as they can. So let's say and so much effort goes into getting that decision made to sign off the budget for a project, then they want to get everything they can into it. So they might spend $40,000 on a project, but they could have actually spent 3 lots of 10,000 and got better data, right? But the problem is you have to go through 3 rounds of decision making, which is torturous. So when they get a decision made to do a project, they just want to cram in as much as they can. And that's why we still have 20, 30-minute questionnaires, even after all this time.
Wonderful. Thank you. Good. Next, who else wants to volunteer? This man over here. Martin, can you collect all the...
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Audrin from Singtel. For us, well, for me, it's actually just a personal answer. We just happily chatted here while everyone else was doing it. For us, the biggest barrier to mobile adoption, mobile research adoption, it's actually the inability of research agencies and clients to synergize the technology with the market research expertise. The technology is there, but it's limited for now. So there are not a lot of technologies that can support mobile research. And we can't marry that for now. So the market research expertise and the technology are currently separate. No one has been successful in synergizing them in order to create that experience that is seamless, cost-effective, producing the timelines that we want. I mean, we have tried it. We're not there yet. I'm sure other companies are trying it. So far, we don't hear anything out of the ordinary. So that's it. Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, thanks. Who's next? Over there.
So at our table, we had actually 3 different 3 factors coming in. One was pure panel quality and the size of the panel, I think. When we sometimes need to do research, there are some low incidence rates factors, or they need to be pretty specific. And sometimes we do hear some big numbers, but compared to traditional online research or even face-to-face, the approachable population still seems to be a little small for some countries especially. And another topic that came up was there are questions which still do need to be answered in some people's minds in terms of this does require a longer research. It's not 5 minutes chopped into 4. It is actually things that you need to combine data pieces together, and how does mobile approach that? The third, probably one of the biggest factors, which created a lot of excited discussion, is inertia and mindset, that it is just difficult to get people to cross the border from going to online to mobile and convince, as you mentioned before, all of the stakeholders why we need to go mobile, especially in an era where market researchers are being rushed into, okay, we need to do this research in 2-3 weeks. You don't have the time built in or the budget built in to actually convince people that we should do mobile for this specific situation. So it just ends up doing business as usual.
Great. Okay. Another table. Guy. Sorry, can we get the mic here for Guy for 1 second? Thanks.
Okay, I've got 2 for you here. I'm not going to say I necessarily agree with these, but I'm going to give you these are what I think are perceptions. So the first one is I hear a lot of people saying that there isn't sufficient representative sample available. Representative, I think, being the key word in that, because we all know that there are plenty of sample available. Second one is, for a lot of market research agencies that have standardized products, it's very challenging and difficult for them to redesign that into a short mobile version and have to rebuild new norms. And a lot of clients don't like the idea of losing the past 15, 20 years of norms.
Yeah, okay. Norms as well. Cool, yeah. Norms and trend, that would be. Right. Sorry, Brandon.
Robin from Skim. For me, it would have to be an incentive to actually adapt to mobile, and I think it's been mentioned a few times here. Being able to reach representative, correct sample if you switch to mobile and if you limit your questionnaire length to 5 minutes for an affordable price. If I can reach those people, then there's a very clear incentive for me to actually limit my questionnaire length. But a lot of cases now, I don't have to. For the markets that are going to be online, I can do an online survey. I don't have to adapt to mobile. For the markets where I cannot do online, I'm going to have to go face-to-face anyway. I have a tablet, so I'm going to design a 20-minute survey anyway, because I know my client is asking this of me. So I have a very clear incentive to actually shorten the questionnaire length, because then I can do it affordably, and then I can reach the representative target group. Then that would be an incentive for me.
Cool. Okay, great. It's always been this side of the room, so has this side of the room got anything to say? James, come on.
Pretty much the same points which people are mentioning. We're just saying that in the mobile research, we typically think of only smartphones, and thereby we limit ourselves to the A and Bs, not the maybe even the Cs, but not the lower economic groups.
Low economic groups. Okay, so that's like basically representative sample again.
Yeah.
Almost. Okay. Okay. Anybody else? No? Okay, one more over there.
Hey, Dan Welch from Ipsos. Just one personal perspective is that I'm not sure whether there's enough education out there around from internally and external perspective of the value that mobile brings to the table over more traditional techniques, and that can be associated with sometimes the additional cost of mobile as well.
Interesting. Okay. Okay.
I think for us as in household appliances, we did more of design research. So design, appliances, you have to touch and feel. So mobile is just a bit too far away from consumers to do it. And we also feel there's a demographic bias because decision makers and purchasers tend to be slightly older with our appliances. So we don't use that much of a...
Okay. Thanks. Okay. Great.
One more here.
Oh, one more. Okay. Yep, sorry.
I would just say...
Oh, we've got 2 more. All right, okay. Keep them coming.
I think just as a general comment, market research industry is not known for innovation or moving at a fast pace. I'd say we're more like the picture that was shown earlier of a sloth.
Yeah.
So I think generally people are just very happy doing what they've always done, and there's a lack of willingness to change. You know, if I look at some of the standard protocols that we as a company do and the rest of the industry do, it's been done the same way for probably 20, 30 years. And it's like, well, if there's not a real need to change, people would just stay doing the same things that they've always done.
Yeah.
So it's a cultural thing as well.
It's a fear of change.
Yeah.
Okay. And sorry.
Hello, Phil Hearn, MRDC. Three things come to mind, one or two which have been said already, and one or two of these points actually overlap slightly. But I think long questionnaires is certainly something I would cite as being a problem, and without restating that in any more depth. I think trying to bring old research techniques to mobile is something that I think has been a failure to some extent. Some questionnaires that might work on paper don't necessarily work when you go mobile, and I set the overlaps with long questionnaires. And the third thing, and this is more of a question perhaps than a firm statement, because I don't run research agency myself, but I do wonder whether research agencies are actually geared up in their sales to actually sell smaller, faster surveys, when perhaps they're more geared up in many cases to sell projects worth several thousands of dollars.
So it's structural then, really? With
structural, yes, yeah.
Okay.
Well put,
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So, as luck would have it, I've prepared some answers to some of these barriers to mobile research adoption, because what you're saying here is actually similar to what we're hearing from an awful lot of clients. And so the thing around long questionnaires, that's a huge barrier to adoption. Representative sample is a huge barrier. And the one which I like most is around inertia and fear, and things like that. It's quite interesting that lots of people mentioned that, because actually most people are scared of actually even mentioning that they're scared. So, the first barrier which we see, and was actually stated by 3 people, was representative sample. So is it possible to gain representative sample in this region to be able to take part in mobile research? So when we look at what we're doing here, is I'm just going to show you the profile of the panels or the access to consumers which are possible on mobile. So this is done from our feasibility reports. So what you can see is that when we look at how balanced it is in terms of male and female, we can see the census data there of 49 to 51%, and the way that it comes out for mobile sample is around 32% female, 68% male. And so we can see that there's a skew. But 2 years ago, when we started getting going in Indonesia, that was 90% males, 10% females. And so actually, when you've got that amount of people, you can make that balanced. You can make it work 50-50 male-female. When we look at age, what we can see here is that actually you can't get older people to do mobile surveys. It's incredibly difficult to get those people over the age of 45 to take it. So 2% of the sample that we can gain access to is actually over 45 years old. So that is an issue when you need to have truly nationally representative studies. But actually most of our clients are bothered about selling things and understanding the opinions of consumers between the ages of 16 and 45 years old. So you have to be very upfront when you're talking to clients about mobile research. It is not nationally representative, because you can't get those older people to do it. However, it is representative of those people 16 to 45 years old. So, can we get it from all areas of the country? So I'm just showing Indonesia here as the example, but this is true of all of the countries in the region. So actually doing nationally representative sampling in Indonesia is incredibly difficult face-to-face, because you have a large rural population. You have an amazingly large population distributed across a whole variety of different regions and islands. However, all of these people have mobile phones. And so therefore, actually, when you look at the census compared to the survey sample that you can gain via mobile, it actually falls out fairly nicely across the different regions. Can you gain access to rural sample? Yes, you can. It's possible. You can see here in Java, for example, that 36% of the sample you can gain access to is rural. So actually, you can make this work. You can gain the census data for urban versus rural, and you can get it so that it is representative. So how is this possible? Well, you need to have survey technology that works across all web-enabled devices. This isn't just a smartphone. If you're just going for smartphone people, it will be skewed, without a doubt. And so I think James mentioned it very nicely beforehand. There's a few people in this room who can do this. And my objective here is I'd love you to buy from my company. But more than anything, I would love you to buy from the whole industry and make the industry much bigger. Because actually, there's a lot of people who can do this. And so actually, when we see this split out, we can see that the sample in Indonesia splits out about 45% feature phone, 55% smartphone. This skews between different demographics. And so actually, if you need to gain access to females who are slightly slower adopters, then you need to be able to gain access to the feature phones. You can use devices as a way to actually target particular samples. And so actually, if we're short of a female sample, we target feature phones, and we get more people there. In Malaysia, for example, if we're short of Chinese people with Chinese ethnicity, we actually target iPhones, because actually the Chinese consumers in Malaysia are disproportionately likely to have an iPhone. Equally, people who speak Bahasa are more likely to have a feature phone in Malaysia. So that's the first one. So actually, it is possible to gain representative sample, but the representative sample is 16 to 45, and that needs to be spelled out and understood. It will get better over time. So the next thing is data quality, and calibrating this to face-to-face. And so one of the barriers which was mentioned was the trend. And the problem is, how do you move from 10, 15, 20 years of face-to-face data collection through to mobile? Well, actually, it's a very scary thing to do because you have all of that data. Actually, what you need to do is you need to do calibration exercises. You need to work out how does it differ, because it does differ. But if it's showing some sort of calibration, you know that it's actually going to work. So we work quite a bit with a company called Millward Brown, and what we've done with them is done a correlation exercise to show how various studies we've done have calibrated against face-to-face research. And then actually compared that through to market share data from the client. And so if we look at the Malaysia example here, what we can see is that the mobile data collection had a 0.94 correlation against market share data. So that's almost perfect. When you look at that in comparison to face-to-face, actually the quality of the data was improved. So here's the big one, survey length and the design of that survey. And so we are never, ever going to be able to do a 45-minute survey on mobile. And anybody who tries to do that, good luck to them. And I hope you enjoy it. But the data you'll get will not be, I would say, of any use. We did a quick poll of people in our panel in Malaysia, and we found out 2% of people who would take one of our surveys in Malaysia would be prepared to take a 40-minute survey. So that kind of explains what you're doing. But using good survey design, you can increase the length of surveys done on mobile. And actually, if you work on best practice, if you evaluate what you've done previously, see what works, see what doesn't work, then actually you can start to improve the length and get it to a point where you can collect enough meaningful data, because that need from clients to collecting a larger amount of data is not going to go away. And it's a very justified need. People need to collect more than 10 questions worth of data. So we've got best practice guidelines. We can go into that. If anybody's interested, we could send you through the documents on it. We've analyzed around 25 million surveys and looked at what works, what doesn't work, and so on. But here's an interesting thing from a smartphone survey, and this was just a smartphone survey in Indonesia. So it's 40 questions long, and what we're trying to find out is it possible to do 40 question surveys? We use a technique called an encouragement message. And so it's it sounds a very American term. I'm not quite sure how on earth we came up with it. But basically, people's attention does wane over time. But actually what you need to do is people are actually fairly prepared to give you 10 minutes of their time. But actually you need to try and make sure that their mind is focused on the task at hand. And so in the middle of the survey, we just say, hey, take a moment. You're halfway through. Please carry on. And we found that this significantly improves the quality of the data. We also then run our algorithm through the data in all times to take out anybody who's not paying attention. And that means that our clients never see the bad data, because the longer the survey you get, the worse quality data you collect. And that's a fact. There's not much you can do about it. But what we can see from this drop-off here in the survey is that it evens out after around 20 questions. What you can then do is you can do things called survey chunking. So you can split up these surveys into two, and you can collect even more data. We've just got into field yesterday with a new piece of research on research, which looks into how long a mobile survey possibly can be, and other different techniques such as data fusion, which will enable us to understand whether we can do various 10-minute surveys and then fuse all of that data back together to be able to get one complete data set for a 40-minute questionnaire, for example. Those techniques are possible. It's fairly complicated to do, and there's cost in complication quite often, but it is possible. So barrier 4, why would I use it? And so this here is something around what the gentleman from Ipsos said, around how you just don't see the reason. Why would you bother to do it? So I've got a couple of case studies. So brand tracking in Malaysia, we're now moving into the 3rd year of doing this with one of our clients. What it's enabled their client to do is gain weekly data, which they couldn't do previously, and they get that data delivered 2 days afterwards after it's been collected. So they manage to make much quicker decision-making as a result of that. We've been doing things like rapid concept testing, for example. And so for some of our clients, they want to be able to test ideas very quickly. And so this here was done for a large multinational market research firm. Their client was doing a 2-day ideation session. They're thinking up lots of ideas. But what they wanted to do at the end of the first session was they wanted to be able to screen out some ideas which weren't useful. And so we sent a text message to people on the panel in India, managed to get their feedback, and it was all collected within around 12 hours. We launched it at 6 p.m. UK time. They had the data for 8 a.m. in the morning the next day. These sorts of things are possible. And things like mobile diaries. And so mobile diaries fit into different camps. You can use it for things such as understanding brand encounters. But this here is an example of one which we did for another research agency, which enabled our clients to be able to collect a very large amount of data about consumption behavior from consumers in Indonesia. There was 8,000 people on the panel. They checked in 4 times a week for a 2-month period, and so we collected a remarkable 320,000 diary interactions, which were then used to understand all consumption behavior in the country. So what is the biggest fear? I just gave it away, damn it. And this is, Martin, where we're going to choose our winners of it. But we had this from 3 people who said what the biggest fear was. And the biggest, the biggest barrier. And the biggest barrier, which I gave away very nicely anyway, I ruined it, is fear, and fear of change. And so, who won? Ah, Naomi from McKinsey. Well done. Pure bribery. And, oh, right, so loads of people worked it out. Phil from MRDC. Oh, right, there we go. Nice. Well done, anyway. Thank you, mate. Well done. So fear is the biggest barrier. All of the other barriers are possible to change through working hard at this and through collecting enough data to be able to convince people that you can gain representative sample, that you can do longer questionnaires if you redesign them, that there is more ideas out there for how mobile research can be useful. But fear is a big thing, and it's something which really scares people into doing it. You don't want to do something new. But what we would say to everybody is be bold, because fortune favors the brave. And so I'll give you a couple of examples of this, of clients who have really adopted this and what's happened to them. Things are personal motivations, after all. You have to want to do this. And so last week, I met one of our clients who works for a very large consumer goods company. He's just done a series of projects with us. It cost him around $100,000. But exactly the same projects he did last year cost $400,000. When I walked into the office, he hugged me, which was quite nice. His boss was obviously pretty happy that he'd saved $300,000. It's a significant amount of money to save, and it is possible. Another client of ours used mobile research to evaluate mobile advertising. And what they managed to do is they managed to get their client to go from a $50,000 budget on media spend on mobile advertising, And that client now, last year, spent 1.2 million because they evaluated it and showed that mobile advertising works effectively. And another one who sold in the first mobile tracker into his organization, it's a very large market research company, did incredibly well at getting that out there. The client was very happy about it, and that was a few years ago. As a result of that, that person's now become the regional CEO. It's not the only reason for it. He's got a lot of other things going for him, obviously, but fortune does favor those people who make that leap of faith and make that effort. So, thank you.
That's it. Thanks, Alistair.